So I was going to watch the World Origami Championship, but it was pay-per-view.
Okay. Wah, wah, wah. All right. Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. It's April the 8th, 2018. I'm going to issue an apology right now for something that I hope will not happen. I've been having internet problems today, and if the video suddenly quits, that's what's going on. It typically won't let me reconnect to the show if that happens. So I'll apologize in advance, but keep your fingers crossed that won't happen. So, everybody pray to the gods of the internet, everybody listening. So Sara Bardi is our guest today. Hey, Sara, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing fine, thank you.
Sara is an artist, and she's the author of Lovely Lovecraft, which is a Lovecraftian webcomic. So we'll talk to her about that in a minute after we introduce everybody. Why don't we start with Kelly?
Kelly Young, Strange Eons Magazine.
Wow, you're not the executive editor this week.
Well, I am the executive editor, but I thought that maybe you were starting to get editor envy.
Yeah, that's true. Matt?
Hi, I'm Matt Carpenter. I'm one of the flunkies at Ulthar Press sometimes when they have me, and I have a wonderful prize today. If you are a comic book fan, you are in luck. This is a shot in the dark Lovecraft PI, Paranormal Investigator. It is a 3-issue arc, and we have all 3 issues.
And now, man, they're in good shape too.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I'm not a collector, so I did read these. I don't think there are any chocolate or soup stains. Can't guarantee it. Usually that ends up on my belly before it ever gets to a book. Anyway, Fritz Stryker and D.W. Cohn wrote and edited it, and the art is by the wonderful Antonio Brandao. So if you want all 3 issues delivered to your door, well, good luck with that.
Yeah. All right. We'll tell everybody how they can win that later. I think people who listen to the show or watch the show every week already know. But Pete.
What?
Introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah. I'm Pete Rollick. I bleed onto pages and then try to sell it.
You and Pulver.
Yeah.
Rick.
I'm Rick Lay, writer.
Sara, will you tell us a little bit about yourself? And then I think Rick's going to start off with a couple questions, and I'll have some questions too.
Yes, of course. So I am a comic artist and concept artist from Italy. I live in Florence right now, and it's the same city where I studied, even if I'm not from here. I just moved. So I'm currently broadcasting from my new house, and I'm quite kind of happy about that. Aside from that, I am a huge Lovecraft fan since college, I would say. That's when I started to read my fantastic Italian anthology, which has this super cute Lovecraft on the cover. And I fell in love with Lovecraft's mythology since then, and decided basically to turn my the little project that I was doing in art school into what later on became my actual published comic, Lovely Lovecraft.
Okay, great. Rick, why don't you start us off?
Well, Sara has a pre-order on a tarot card deck of Cthulhu Mythos characters.
Yep.
Called the Eldritch Tarot. And I think it's probably the best Cthulhu Tarot card set I've ever seen.
Thank you.
You did some very clever things in there. You made the High Priest Cthulhu, which makes total sense if you read Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
You made the Emperor, the King in Yellow. It's one of the best drawings of the King in Yellow I've ever seen. You made the Tower, the Church from Story Wisdom. I think, now this is based on memory because Mike luckily has the complete deck as an early version, or an early release, I can say.
Yes.
He has, I think he had Nyarlathotep as the magician. Am I correct?
Yes, I do.
And it was the showman version from the
story, the Nyarlathotep story. Yes.
Yes.
Here's for those watching. Here's the King in Yellow one. So, yeah, it's great stuff.
That's beautiful.
When will we see that out for regular distribution?
So basically, the Kickstarter, because this was founded on Kickstarter, the Kickstarter is completely funded, is finished. And most of the decks have been already printed. So I have some decks here, and the other decks are still in Spain because this project was made by me and a Spanish colleague, I would say. And the printing was handled completely by him. So he took care about all of that part. And the delay, I mean, the reason why we couldn't ship the decks to the people that already paid for them, which is a bit sad, I must admit, was because since we live in different countries, he had to send me some of the decks because I had to sign them. And of course, this took, some time because we had to find a way to package all these decks that I had to get them to sign each one of them, and they were a lot, and then to send them back to him. But he now has the decks, all of them. So from the Cthulhu Project website, you can already purchase the decks, and I think that in a month or so they should be able, to be sold everywhere. I mean, they ship all around the world, so again, it's a matter of a month or so, I hope.
What's that website address, or what should they search for?
It's Cthulhu Project.
I have it in CthulhuShop.com.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, because Cthulhu Project is like, the publisher, and Cthulhu Shop is the shop of the Cthulhu Project.
And then they're saying they're going to ship in May.
Yeah. I don't know if you can read to be written here.
Yeah. You had to sign each card?
No, just the covers of the package, and we also printed some larger cards. I don't have any right here, but basically we did the King in Yellow and Cthulhu in bigger size, like they were like postcards basically, and I signed those that came along with the full deck.
Nice.
Yeah, this deck
is only €13 to order the major arcana.
Yeah.
So it's not expensive.
It's a steal, I thought, when I saw what the price was.
What's that like? €13? Is that like what, $4,500?
I think it's something more like $26.
Oh, okay.
Let's see, euros to dollars, $15.96 today. So now,
so now,
that's pretty good.
That's a question. What got you into tarot cards, Sarah?
Excuse me, can you repeat?
How did you get into tarot cards?
Oh, this is a funny story. It's something that kind of relates to how I find out about Lovecraft in the first place. Because during my college days, I was a lot into, occult as a thing in general. So I used to, I think it's a phase that like every teenage girl undergoes. And so I remember I used to read all the books like about Wiccans, witchcraft in general. And so I had lots of things like flying around my house, tarot decks, pendulums, those for making like divination or stuff like that. It's kind of funny because once I started to read Lovecraft, it was because I found online about the Necronomicon. And for like, I don't know, a couple of hours, I actually believed that the Necronomicon was an actual arcane text that really existed, which is something that made a huge impression on me because I was like, oh crap, like this thing looks much more cooler than all the actual magic books that I've read so far. And yeah. They came from there.
When you discovered it, there probably were a couple of phony Necronomicons on the market back then.
Yeah, exactly. I think I read one. I found out like I downloaded it online, and it was in like an Italian version of the Necronomicon, but it wasn't the Simon one. It was like a prop made for LARPing. So there was actually some guy that made this text in order to be printed and used in Call of Cthulhu live, RPG. And it was amazing.
Any more questions, Rick?
No, I'm done.
All right. Anybody else, or you guys want me to start or take it from here? Go ahead, Pete.
Oh no, I was just going to tell you to take it from there.
Oh,
actually, I did want to comment.
Yeah.
If you also want to see some of Sarah's artwork, she has some pictures in Autumn Cthulhu, right?
Yes.
I do.
Very nice.
I actually have the book right here.
That's the version that only some of it was a higher Kickstarter level.
The
That's
one with the
cover
by Dave Belton.
Yeah. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sending these to me, by the way.
You got 2 illustrations in there, if I remember correctly. I love them.
Yeah, I got the Lavinian one. I think it's in the yes.
Wasn't it the Thomas brothers, both Thomas brothers, that you did?
Yes, I did. I did. Let me see. Yes.
Scott Thomas and Jeffrey Thomas.
Scott and Jeffrey. Yes. This one is, and the other one is. I think it's here. Yes. This one.
Yeah. And if you think that's nice, you should see them in color. They're pretty great.
Yeah.
So, how did Lovecraft begin? I mean, exactly. What made you decide to do that webcomic?
This is actually an interesting question because, originally it was not supposed to be actually about Lovecraft. It was more like something inspired by Lovecraft. Like the main character was still called Howard. He was still, look a bit like Lovecraft, but he was not supposed to be actually Lovecraft. So the idea basically came out because I was still in art school at the time, and we got an assignment to create concept art for, an hypothetical TV series, like a cartoon, something like that. So we had to create a main character and basically his sidekick, in a sense. And again, I grew up watching cartoons like the Batman, the animated series, like, I don't know, Gargoyles, or all the very dark and adult cartoons that were around in the 90s. And so that was kind of what I had in mind when I started to sketch the characters. And I don't even know if I still have the original concept, but basically at some point I decided, I basically said, fuck this is going to be about Lovecraft. Instead of just inspired by. And that's, the reason why design-wise, Howard doesn't look a lot like Lovecraft. I mean, when you stylize, when artists try to stylize Lovecraft even as a child, they usually give him a very elongated face. Just like here, basically. Yeah. Even when they draw him as a kid, they still try to keep this face structure. While my Lovecraft is a bit more round, a bit more chubby, and that's because, again, this was a concept that originally wasn't supposed to be actually Lovecraft, but then he became Lovecraft.
Can I interrupt just a second?
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested in European interest in Lovecraft. Is this a big deal in Italy, like in the circles of people who like dark fiction? Is Lovecraft a big deal in translation, or do most Italians read English also?
I wouldn't say so. English is now. Most people of my age, like my peers, most of us speak English at this point. My English is not perfect, but I'm fluid at the point. I can sustain a conversation and all. Like my parents, they can't speak English. My dad a little bit, my mother at all, not at all. And this is true for many people of the same age of my parents, so around the 40s. And
oh God,
I'm going to throw myself under the bus.
Yeah, me too.
I'm old enough to be granddad.
I'm old enough to be her dad. Crap.
It's fine, guys. It's fine. But
it's okay to be old.
I would say that Lovecraft is more popular, at least as far as my knowledge is concerned, is more popular among gamers right now. Like people that like tabletop games or the RPG like Call of Cthulhu and the Chaosium one, or even people that play video games and stuff like that. Most people are familiar with the stuff that is inspired by Lovecraft and not with Lovecraft himself. Of course, there are people that also really like the books, actually, these big anthologies that we have right around here, and some of them have been also like republished recently, because now there is like kind of a revival of Lovecraft. It is more popular now than like let's say 5 years ago or something. But at the same time, it's still very niche, and yeah, that's basically my point. I know that in Spain it's much more popular than it is in Italy, but we are getting there to this point.
Getting back to Lovely Lovecraft for a second, do I understand this right? It's available for free online, and there's also a print version that you can buy? Is that right?
Yes, because basically how it works is that they bought the rights only for the Italian edition. So the fact is that I cannot sell, or just share the Italian comic on the internet, but I can do whatever I want with the English one. So
I see.
That's why the English version is still on DeviantArt and everybody can read it, while the Italian one you can only purchase, the paperback comic.
For those who are interested, who are listening or watching, I put a link to Lovely Lovecraft in the below the video, or in the synopsis of the show. So, are you saying the print version's only available in Italian?
At this moment, yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand. All right.
Any chance of an English version?
I don't know. If a publisher is interested, maybe. At this point, I mean, it's not like, the comic is still going, so I should be able to have the second volume out this year, like around October or something like that. Again, this is for the Italian version. So unless I am considering, like, I don't know, maybe printing like a little number of copies in English once the whole series is completed. It's going to be probably around 4 or 5 volumes. I'm still on the fence about that, because it depends how can I fit into a volume the story that I have in mind, because some I already scripted a huge part of it, but it's still flexible. Like, the script is still flexible, because at times I need to, like, I reread a chapter that I finished, and like, yeah, I could use like 5 more pages to explain this better, and so I add pages. So I suck at planning, basically.
What's the general, without spoilers, what's the general synopsis or plot of Lovely Lovecraft? So
the basic idea is that it revolves around what happened actually to Randolph Carter at the end of the Dream Quest of Unknown Cadet. But and it ties in with Through the Gates of the Silver Key, but in a different way, in which the actual story does, because the general idea was to take all these different stories, and some of them are not even from Lovecraft. Like the only character that is not from Lovecraft's work is Hildred Castaigne from Robert W. Chambers' King Yellow, because I found him hilarious, and so I was like, I need this guy in the story. and he actually serves a purpose. It's not just there for the laughs. And
yeah.
But overall, the idea was to take all these separate stories, like Pickman's model, the statement of Randolph Carter, basically all Randolph Carter's stories, all of them, and Dreams in the Witch House, Nyarlathotep, many of them, and put them together in just one story. And the character that ties everything together is Carter, but Carter is not present until much later. I mean, we get other characters telling about his quest in the Dreamlands and stuff like that, but he's not present in the story at a certain point. And basically, the story begins with actually, with H.P. Lovecraft at 10. He's like 12 years old at this point in the story, and he and his mother Sara, they moved from Providence to Arkham, and the only house that they can afford in Arkham is actually Carter's old mansion. So the entire plot revolves basically around 12 years old tiny H.P. Lovecraft exploring and finding out about Randolph Carter and all this mess that happened on top of Anon Kadat, and really nobody actually knows what happened, and so they are trying to piece it together.
Okay.
It's kind of difficult to explain it because the story helps. The story is actually very linear. When it's in script form, but I moved the various scenes a little bit to keep some mystery. So that's the point.
I don't think I've asked you this yet, or Rick did. Exactly how did you discover Lovecraft? How did you discover him?
Exactly. I think it was surely thanks to the internet. It wasn't like someone told me you should read this guy's work because he's amazing. No.
Right.
I found Lovecraft's work by myself. And I think that the very first story that I read was actually The Outsider. And that story was The Outsider and Pickman's Model. Both stories I read like the same day or something. And both stories were in my book, the books that you used to study literature in school. I don't remember. Textbook? Yes. It was my literature textbook at school. They had a section about horror stories, and there were some stories about Edgar Allan Poe and The Outsider and Pickman's Model by Lovecraft.
Okay.
In the actual textbook. And I remember that many years later, when I was reading Lovecraft on my own, I remembered those two stories that I had previously read, because The Outsider, in my opinion, is one of those stories that really sticks with you because of the twist ending.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, I remember this story. But at the time, I was like, 12 probably. Or at the time, I didn't even realize that both stories were from the same guy, basically.
Right. What is it for you personally about cosmic horror and Lovecraftian horror that appeals to you?
I think is the mystery. There are so many things that we don't know about Lovecraft's gods, for instance. We don't know, and we will never know, and that's the interesting part, the good part about it. If, for instance, if they are really evil or not, or if they are simply unconcerned about us because they are so superior to humankind. And so what we perceive as evil may not be evil. Good and evil as concepts are very subjective, and something that relates to humans as a society, as how you perceive morals and stuff. So you get these characters, not just the gods and the entities, but also characters like Pickman, Carter, Warren. All of them, they live. They are not part of the human race in a sense, because like Carter feels that he doesn't belong. So does Pickman, and so does Warren. So all these characters, they kind of feel more akin to the unknown and the outside than they actually do to their own race and their own species. So it was probably, you know, this mystery and this ambiguity, how do you spell it?
Yeah.
About the entire thing. And also because I think, let me rephrase it. I think that Lovecraft had this taste, of course, for horror, but he also was a person that really, really loved many things: architecture. He loved history. He loved, you know, the Greek poems, and you can really feel his passion for these things in particular. So it's not just the horror. It's not just, you know, the insignificancy of humans, but it's also a celebration of those few things that, in his opinion, were worth saving, in a sense.
Yeah.
And so it's like a combination of the two things. It's nihilistic in a sense, but at the same time, you have this celebration of what mankind can accomplish.
Yeah, and what you said regarding good and evil, I mean, if cows and chickens could think about it, they'd consider us evil, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys, do you have any more questions for Sara?
Yes, I sure do.
Go ahead.
So you're a freelancer, right? What's your training in art? Did you go to university? And what are you doing these days?
So I went to a private school, which is not a university. I mean, you don't get a degree once you graduate there. You just learn how to do things. Basically, it's, you know, you get practical skills instead of an actual piece of paper that says that you have studied something. And the school that I attended is called Nemo, like Captain Nemo, basically. And also, little parenthesis, I say it basically a lot, and I apologize. So, yes, I studied in this private school. And before that, I went to an art college. So it was similar subjects like, you know, math, literature, history. But I also had previous artistic training like painting and real life drawing and stuff like that. And right now, I am working still on the comic and also taking commissions from whoever is interested. I'm actually going to reopen commissions soon because I have like people in line that are waiting for their turn.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is. It means money. But also, you know, the fact that I love to do works for others, but at the same time, I want to give them priority over my stuff. So that this means that I can't work on my stuff. And some people, like some of the guys that are the super really nice guys that are supporting me on Patreon, some of them are just waiting for instance, the next page of Lovely Lovecraft or any of the other stuff that I'm working. And when I'm working on commissions, I can't do that for my patrons. So I have to find a balance between the two things.
Right. That makes sense. Anyone else have a question for Sara?
I do.
Okay.
I'm looking at some of your art here, Sara, and I definitely see when you said that you grew up on the Batman animated series and Gargoyles. I definitely see some of that in there. Can you talk a little bit about your influences as an artist?
Yeah, definitely. So my hero, when I was growing up, my hero as a child was Tim Burton. I grew up with like The Nightmare Before Christmas. Like The Nightmare Before Christmas is probably the first movie I ever saw, or at least the first one that I remember seeing. So you can imagine what sort of parents do I have. I love them, but they are super weird. And so Tim Burton's stuff really impressed me, kind of for the same reason why I was impressed by Lovecraft, because you get both the very dark and gritty stuff and also heartwarming, lessons and morals and characters that, despite their appearance, they are adorable. And I kind of like this duality in designs in general. So Tim Burton definitely was a huge influence on me as an artist. And another artist that I really like is a French comic artist called Mara. And yes. She does, you know her? Yeah. She does lovely stuff, especially comics. And I'm not, I haven't read all of her comics, but I watched her, I followed her on DeviantArt for quite some time, and I really like her style. So that was another huge inspiration for me. And the third one, and probably the biggest, was, of course, Disney and DreamWorks. But I would say more DreamWorks than Disney, because I like Disney movies, but I don't really dig the style, especially not the more recent movies. For instance, I don't like Frozen. I don't like Rapunzel. I don't like most Pixar movies, not because they are bad movies, but I don't like the visuals for some reason. While I really liked movies like Road to El Dorado growing up, The Prince of Egypt, that very angular kind of art style.
What about anime? Like I thought I saw a hint of anime in your work. Do you like Miyazaki at all?
Not really. Mostly because I haven't seen many of his movies when I was a kid. So I think that's the reason why I can't really get into them. Not all of them. There are some movies from Miyazaki that I like. For instance, I really like Howl's Moving Castle. But like Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, that movies, I've seen them, and I can, appreciate the art, but the stories just don't resonate with me for whatever reason. I definitely watch and like many mangas and animes. Do you even put the S at the end? I don't know. My questions about the English language. I apologize.
We're the wrong people to ask.
I'm always concerned about making mistakes and probably making a ton of them.
Hey, you know what? I only speak one language. You speak more than one, so you're way ahead of me.
But yeah, most of the Japanese stuff that I like is mostly video games. Like I grew up with Final Fantasy, which was probably another game that really had a big impact on me. I mean, I have like some Yoshitaka Amano art on my wall right behind me, and he's the he was the character design for the old Final Fantasy games. He did this really lovely watercolor paintings. Yeah.
For the listeners, if you just Google Sara Bardi, S-A-R-A, no H at the end, and then Bardi is B-A-R-D-I, then her sites, her Patreon comes up, her Facebook page, and so on and so forth. So that's a great way to get more information on Sara and her work. You can also Google Lovely Lovecraft. So both of those should work.
I got a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Since Sara was going into movies, in the 80s there was a outburst of Lovecraftian themes in Italian horror movies. The one I know about is Lucio Fulci's The Beyond, which is about a gate of hell that the Book of Ibon from Clark Ashton Smith opens. Were you influenced by any of those?
No.
Short answer.
Good answer.
Still good answer. So more animated films than regular horror films has been your influence.
Yeah, definitely. I'm an animation girl.
Okay, so you got a question, Pete?
Yeah. So, Sara, what's your process like? Do you work every day? Do you block out time?
It depends. It depends. There are like some days that I spend from morning to midnight in front of a computer working nonstop, and other days I try, to schedule things a little bit more. So like I take a break sometime, or I completely skip work for a day or two and then come back. The problem is, when you work, especially with digital media like I do, spending so much time in front of a computer really, really makes your eyes tired, really tired. So at times I have to stop just, for my own sanity and health. But I tend to work many hours per day, which is probably why I look so pale despite living in sunny Italy.
Okay, so at the last Necronomicon, I walked over to your table at one point, and you gave me these lovely Eldritch tarot cards, which I really appreciate. Thank you. But also, you were talking nonstop about Bloodborne. I mean, you're very passionate about the game Bloodborne. So I told you then that I wanted to have you on the show to just talk about that for a few minutes too, and why it appeals to you so much.
Yeah, so I wanted to make a little bit of an introduction for Bloodborne, because I know that not everyone, as you told me before, not everyone owns a PS4, of course.
Right,
and the game being exclusive to the Sony consoles, it is not available to everyone. It's not like something that you can download on Steam and play on a regular PC. And there is also the fact that some people are really, really scared of these kind of games, because the creators of Bloodborne are also the creators of Dark Souls. So the fame that Dark Souls has of being this very, very hard game, and it is hard, I'm not going to say that it's easy, but basically the fame that these games have is mostly about their difficulty, and people tend to ignore the actual art and story and the lore and all the actually interesting stuff that's in the games. And I personally find the combat, the challenge, really, really engaging. Is the reason why these games are so popular. But that's just one of the many things that is good about these games. I have been a gamer for basically in my entire life. And last generation, like when the PS3 was around, I was like in a moment of crisis, because like a moment of sadness, because the games that were coming out, they were good, some of them, but nothing really blew me away as games used to do in the past when I was younger.
Right.
And Bloodborne truly reignited my love for gaming as a whole. And that's an accomplishment.
Plus, it's very Lovecraftian, right?
Exactly. That's what I was going there. I was getting there. The reason why I decided to buy a PS4 in the first place was because I wanted to play Bloodborne. A friend of mine really, really recommended it to me. He was saying like, Sara, you must play this game. You like Lovecraft so much, you must play this game. And I was like, no, but I don't want to buy a PS4 just for one game, blah, blah, blah. I had a PS3, but again, I wasn't really into gaming at the point, because it was a disappointing period when it came to games, in my opinion, at least.
Right.
And I started getting interested in the story, because this friend kept telling me about it. And so at some point I went like, okay, fine, I'm going to watch some playthroughs on YouTube. And the more I watched, the more I understood that like it was something really, really special. So like I went on eBay and bought the game even before buying a PS4. So I had like the game in my house for like 2 months, and because I got my PS4 for Christmas. and so like I want, if you guys are interested, I wanted to basically explain why I believe that Bloodborne really gets Lovecraft right, what it changes, and how it reimagines the mythos, and why I do believe it's one of the best works in general, inspired by Lovecraft. If you
I am interested, and you know, I probably will never play Bloodborne. I don't have a PS4. My son's a huge gamer, but he's got a gaming computer, so you know he's not going to get the game either. But you know, as you said, and I included a link in the synopsis of the show to one of the walkthroughs, the complete walkthrough of the game. Even if you're never going to play it, it would be neat to just watch the walkthrough like you'd watch a movie.
Definitely.
You know? So you don't have to be a gamer to be interested in what Sarah's about to say. So,
also, I want to point out something, that there are people that are in the Bloodborne fandom, like they, for instance, they do art, they do, you know, role plays, they cosplay, they generally interact with the fandom, and they don't own the game. Or even if they own it, they weren't able to finish it for various reasons. You know, the difficulty is one of these reasons. But some people just really, really got into the story because the story is really engaging. And most people that I know, some people that I know, they got into Lovecraft thanks to Bloodborne. So they kind of had the inverse process of what happened to me. I was into Lovecraft, and so I bought Bloodborne. Some of them did the opposite. They purchased the game first. They got interested in the topics and in the themes, and they wanted to now read Lovecraft.
That's great.
And
yeah.
If you go to the Bloodborne Reddit subreddit, you will find many posts about people asking which story from Lovecraft should I read first in the Bloodborne subreddit, you know, because
right.
People really, really got into cosmic horror thanks to Bloodborne.
What's the general theme of the game as it relates to Lovecraft?
There are many themes, and that's, in my opinion, why it's so great, because it's not just, you know, about cosmic horror, it's also a celebration of Gothic in general. Like you will find stuff that seems to be drawn from like Jekyll and Hyde, Frankenstein, Dracula, many stuff that many pictures, many images, many ideas that you could find in an Edgar Allan Poe poem, for instance. But when it comes to Lovecraft in particular, it is about the place of humans, and not just humans, the place of races in general. Because in Bloodborne there are 2 races, that's why. And so it is. And
all right.
In the cosmos. So what's the position of humanity? Mortals, let's say mortals in the cosmos and in this world that is hostile, but at the same time, that's the difference. That's what Bloodborne makes differently from Lovecraft. In Bloodborne, you will have people actively trying to get to the forbidden knowledge. While in Lovecraft, you get this situation, but it's just, you know, a small number of people. Like you have the crazy cultists in the countryside of Dunwich. They are people that are like isolated. They are considered outcasts, and they are these people, basically these madmen. They are those that worship the great ones, the old ones. The great ones are how Bloodborne calls the old ones. While the difference is in Bloodborne, the intelligentsia, the high society of the world are the guys that are interested in getting in contact with the eldritch beings and the secrets. So my point is that you have this inversion. In Lovecraft, everything is that concerns the search for knowledge, for the forbidden knowledge that mankind is not supposed to know, is seen as evil. The people that are looking for that are the cultists. They must be stopped. And you get, characters like Armitage, and the other professors from Miskatonic University going to Dunwich to stop the rituals and stuff like that. Here you have an entire college. Imagine Miskatonic University, and all the students, all the teachers there are cultists. So the entire world is devoted to this search for the eldritch truth, which is the word, again, the term that Bloodborne uses for the eldritch knowledge, or whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And the idea is that you have this sprawling underground labyrinth, which was built many centuries ago by a pre-human race called the Tumerians. And this race, they got in contact with the old ones or great ones, and their empire fell at some point. We don't know how, we don't know why, and it doesn't matter. The point is that when the Age of Man came, mankind thought that it was a good idea to build an entire city on top of these catacombs. So basically, the situation that you have is as if, let me think about, in the story The Nameless City from Lovecraft, you get this city with all the mummies underneath, and the main character goes and explores the Nameless City, and he finds the pre-human race of reptiles and so on. What happens in Bloodborne is basically that humans found these catacombs. They found stuff in there, not just the mummies, but they also find the blood. Of course, it's the blood from the title of Bloodborne and many other things. And they thought, yeah, we should totally build a city here, and we should totally use all these things that were buried for like centuries, and we should totally use them in order to become ourselves as powerful and as evolved, in a sense, as the old ones were. So the idea of evolution is what drives these people. They want to become like the gods. And of course, it goes terribly wrong. Terribly.
So is that all the players, or when you enter the game, do you get a choice about what path of sorts that you want to take?
The character that you play fills only one role, and that's that of the hunter. Every player plays a hunter, and the hunters were basically a task force that was created by this college I was talking about before, in order to get rid of all the failed experiments that were performed on other humans, in order to turn them into these superior beings, and also in order to explore these underground labyrinth that sits underneath the city. This place wasn't safe, of course. So the scholars needed a group of people to basically allowing them to be archaeologists and go there and explore. So you will play as one of these hunters. And the problem is that this old story that I told you, I tried to, because it's very complex, and I probably did a horrible job explaining it. But all this stuff happened. Nobody exactly knows how long before your arrival. So when you arrive in the city, everything is completely fucked up already. You are witnessing the aftermath of these experiments and the madness that basically was unleashed in the world. What reminds me of Lovecraft, it's also the theme of de-evolution, because you have this character that they want to become, to ascend, to become like the gods, but when these their experiments go wrong, the opposite happens, and that's what really reminds me of Lovecraft, because Lovecraft had, you know, this fixation on like inbreeding, like people getting regressing in the evolutionary line, because of, like, in his mouth you got people that breed with the deep ones, and you get these hybrids. Another story, I think, is called, damn it, I don't remember. What's the name? What's the story? The one in which you have the guy that is like the white ape or something like that. I don't remember.
What's
Arthur German?
Yeah, thank you,
Oh.
Arthur German. In which you get these characters that basically are animal-like.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea in Bloodborne is that if you fail to ascend, you will regress to an animal. And that's what you are hunting as a hunter in the game. You are hunting these people that have regressed into basically werewolves, as far as the game is concerned. Because they couldn't, they weren't able to go on in the evolutionary staircase, or whatever you want to call it. And there's also a theme of religion, but you have to imagine, again, this is the difference between Lovecraft and Bloodborne. You can imagine as if the entire city is run by the Church of Starry Wisdom, like the major cult that is worship, that is, sorry, not worship, that is, yeah, I'm going to say worship because I can find the right word in the city, is literally the cult of the old ones. So everyone worships these gods. It's not secret. They use in the game Christian imagery to depict this sort of worship. So you actually have these big Gothic cathedrals, and the gods that are worshipped there are old ones. You literally have Cthulhu statues and priests that worship them.
right?
In the open, everybody does it. There is also another theme. That's why I'm saying that it's very complex.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
It is, and like there are people that have written like essays, like 200 pages long of essays about this freaking game, and that's also the reason why this game is still alive today after 3 years since its launch. Because it's so complex and it touches topics. Another one that really interested me, and that in my opinion Bloodborne got it extremely right, is the Dreamlands. In Bloodborne, you are connected to a place that serves as a hub for your character. It's basically your shrine, your safe haven between hunts. That is called the Hunter's Dream. And this place is not a dream in the general sense. So it is actually real, just like Lovecraft's Dreamlands are an actual place. It's not imaginary. The Dreamlands in Lovecraft, you guys know, but you know, I'm just going to repeat that for people in the audience, are not something that doesn't really exist. They are a place that can be visited by many people, and people can affect these places. Like Randolph Carter can have his own quest in the Dreamlands, and it is implied that he went there before the story. Many characters that we see in the real world in Lovecraft, for instance, Pickman, that they come up in the Dreamlands because Dreamlands are a place where people can go. And in Bloodborne, the same thing happens. You have nightmares and dreams that are actual places the hunter can visit, and he can bring things from the real world to the dream and vice versa. So they are definitely real. It's not just a dream, as in the Inception kind of idea. It's not something that is inside your head. It's a place that exists.
Right.
And some of the races that are some of the monsters, that are featured in Bloodborne, design-wise, they are very, very similar to Lovecraftian beings. For instance, there is a great one called Amygdala that is basically a skinny Cthulhu. And, a skinny Cthulhu with multiple arms. I think I have a picture here. I want to show you some of the art from, because the game. Let me see if I can find Amygdala quickly. Okay, this is not Amygdala. This is another great one, but I just want to show you the design for some of the creatures.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's really inspired. And they also used another interesting thing, in my opinion, is that most of the old ones in Bloodborne are female. For instance, the creature that I showed you before is called Ebrightas, and she's very angelic, and she's called the daughter of the cosmos. So again, coded female from the very start, which is something that Lovecraft never does in his stories. Most of the great ones, the old ones in Lovecraft are genderless or something. While in this one, they played the aspect of femininity, because they also added the theme of reproduction. The idea is that the great ones cannot have children in a natural way. They kind of need humans in order to procreate. So you get situations similar to that of Lavinia Wheatley in the Dunwich Horror, except that some of the characters in Bloodborne are, since again this is a society of cultists, basically, some characters really want to have these great one babies. Which is something that you would never find in Lovecraft. And this reminds me of a panel that I attended at Necronomicon last year. It was, again, about women in Lovecraft's fiction. And one of the panelists, I don't remember exactly who, asked, why wouldn't a woman, an ambitious woman, why wouldn't she be grateful to be able to give birth to the son of a god, and I remember turning to my friend that was sitting next to me, and we went like, yeah, Bloodborne already did it.
Oh, okay.
For instance, you got this character, and she's a super powerful character, really important in the story. Just a second, because I found Amygdala. And in the version, she doesn't have the tentacles, but the one that you encounter in the game has face tentacles right here. So that's where the Cthulhu aspect comes in. By the way, you get some characters like this very powerful female character, and she's called Annalise. And she is literally a queen in a castle that looks a lot like Dracula's castle from the movie Bram Stoker's Dracula. Yeah. And she has an army of knights at her service, and their goal is to allow her to get pregnant with the son of a great one, for instance. And that's just, a very, an idea that Lovecraft had, but he explored it in a completely different manner, because like in the Dunwich Horror, you get Lavinia, who becomes this surrogate mother for Wilbur and his twin, but it's not painted as something that she wanted to. It's like more Old Whately kind of forcing her to be part of this crazy plan and all. Here you have cultists with agency that really want to get connected to the Eldritch gods in some shape or form.
Yeah. So short version is Bloodborne is very, very Lovecraftian.
But it's also very different at the same time.
All right. Again, if you want to learn more about Sara's art and read Lovely Lovecraft, just Google Lovely Lovecraft, or I've got the link in the synopsis, or Google Sara Bardi, Bardi. So Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Thanks for being on the show. It was great talking. You're welcome to stay with us while we talk about other things, or you can take off. I know it's really late where you are. So
yeah, I know. I will, stay a little bit longer. Once my coffee is done, I will be here tonight.
It's nice to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope it was interesting and I wasn't, not blabbering too much.
Nope.
Nope. More interesting than we are. So.
Speaking of not interesting, let me talk for a while. No, Pete, you want to talk about? I know you want to talk about Legion.
What? Oh, geez.
Speaking of not interesting, Pete.
Wow. So a few months ago,
are you laying in bed?
I am.
Are you laying in bed?
It's 4 o'clock where he is. So
it's 7 o'clock where
7
I am.
And he's an old man.
I am an old man, and I had sat my butt in the chair for 2.5 days straight and typed out 10,000 words this weekend.
Oh, wow.
So
nice.
I am not going to take any of your crap about laying down in bed.
All work and no play makes Pete a dull boy does not count as 10,000 words.
Right.
The word count for the novel went from 50,000 to 60,000 this weekend. So,
well, that's good.
Yes. So anyway, Legion. So several months ago, I watched the first episode of Legion, and I went, and I was very vocal about going, this was stupid.
I agreed with you, yeah.
And, Kelly was like, no, this is the best thing since sliced bread. In fact, it's better than sliced bread. Hell, it's better than Betty White.
Oh, let's not go that far.
Well, yeah.
Crazy talk.
It's crazy talk.
Yeah.
Right?
Nothing's better than Betty White.
I was chastised into saying I should give it another try. So after abandoning...
By Kelly?
Well, by a lot of people.
Okay.
After abandoning Twin Peaks: The Return, because I didn't see the point of a 10-minute Nine Inch Nails video, I picked up Legion, and Mandy and I watched the first episode, and we're like, okay. Now, maybe I was not sober when I watched the first episode, and
that's a high possibility.
That is a serious, now, and so we watched the first episode, we watched the second episode, and I'm impressed. It's actually kind of very avant-garde and surrealistic, and it's a mental mind screw.
Say it. I'm going to drop an F-bomb later. So.
Yeah, it was. I think Sarah already did.
Sarah already dropped the F-bomb.
It's a mental mind fuck, and it's hard to tell where you are in the story and what's going on and who's who and what's what. But it's nice to when you're sitting going, wait, I don't understand that. And somebody on the screen comes on and says, I didn't understand that either, but this is what happened. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's not just me. It's very, and I found it to be very interesting. I've got another 4 episodes to watch this weekend, and I'm spending it with you guys instead. So
the second season just started, right?
Yes, and oddly enough, NPR had the male character on for an interview this week, and talking about all the work that he's done on Downton Abbey. And he was the Beast in the live-action Beauty and the Beast, where he wore the motion capture suit and had to learn to dance on stilts wearing the motion capture suit, which was apparently not something everybody can do.
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys can, but not everyone can do it.
Yeah, well, so yeah, I'm looking at Legion and I'm liking it. I had to explain to Mandy, who didn't grow up with Marvel Comics, where Legion comes from and what his backstory was. And then it was like, you know what? I should never even bother, because they've taken that and just thrown it right out the window.
Yeah, it doesn't adhere very closely to the comic version at all, but there are a number, as you go through the series, there will be a number of Easter eggs that remind you that this is firmly set in the world of the X-Men.
Yeah.
You get the origin of the villain on a chalkboard in the first episode. I mean, in the first season.
Right.
And the thing I liked about it was particularly near the end, there's an asylum setting which is introduced in the first episode, and gradually that becomes something like the cabinet of Dr. Caligari by the end.
Yeah, and I think Aubrey Plaza is doing a standout job as sort of his, I don't know, Jiminy Cricket character, conscience kind of thing. Someone for him to talk to, but
becomes
not really there.
It becomes more complicated than that as you watch. So.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Well, over to DC Comics, I was fully prepared. I said this to you guys privately, but I think this is the first time I've discussed Krypton on the show. I was fully prepared to hate Krypton, but it actually sucked me in. I like it. I've watched the first 3 episodes, and it's pretty engaging. You're watching it too, right, Kelly?
Yeah, I haven't seen that 3rd episode yet, but I thought it was neat that. I mean, I'm with you. We did not need to see a show about Superman's future. In fact, I don't need to see anything. The stuff that I love, I don't want to know where it came from. Just give me more of the stuff I love. I don't want to hear before I loved it or any of that stuff.
Right.
Like McDonald's hamburgers.
And so I thought, God, how bad is this going to be? And then there's another one coming up you were telling me about with Lois and Lex before Superman arrives in
I know I'm going to hate that one. It's called Metropolis. No,
yeah.
just no.
So no. I was right there with you thinking I don't want to see a show set on Krypton before anybody who is anybody, because it's not even Jor-El, Superman's dad. No, it's like his grandfather.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, though, like in the first episode, you find out, Superman is tangentially involved in this series, and it's not too bad.
Yeah, Superman sends Adam Strange to the past. And, they're not afraid to... They've said Adam Strange has used his name or whatever in the series to his grandfather. We have to save Superman. And then his grandfather's like, who the hell's Superman? Well, he's going to be the greatest hero in the universe as long as you do what you're supposed to do.
They've got some neat stuff going on, and Superman's cape plays an important part of this in a Back to the Future kind of way.
Yeah, that was interesting.
It reminds me then of Star Trek Enterprise, where they started to tell you the Federation before Kirk, and then it became a time travel series where guys from the future was trying to muck up everything.
Hey, Rick, we're not interested in your geeky stuff. We're trying to discuss Superman here.
I'm just showing that they borrow the idea. It's been done before.
Yeah, it's because Superman is definitely not geeky stuff. Yeah. Well, I was just... and I've said this several times, but I'm just sick of the Warner Brothers, DC Comics, whoever's in charge, saying... we can't have a Superman or Batman TV series. They can. Superman and Batman can only be on the big screen, and I'm thinking, why?
It did. Lois and Clark didn't run for 8 years.
Ran for 4, but it was kind of campy.
Felt like 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ouch. And Smallville,
Smallville. I'm thinking Smallville.
9 years.
10 years.
10 years. Wow. Yeah. Felt like 8 or 9.
And used a lot of the DC universe in it.
Yeah. Well, in many ways,
you have George Reeves. He was on the air for a while. He did the series, right?
Yeah. And in many ways,
time. Yeah.
And in many ways, Smallville was sort of like a dress rehearsal, getting all the bad ideas and what wasn't going to work for the CW series. You look back and you go, oh crap, that costuming does not work.
Right.
And we should never do that again.
Well, the most unrealistic thing about that Smallville show was none of the superhero antics. It was the fact that this incredibly good-looking, well-built young man was somehow a nerd, an outcast in high school. That wasn't how it worked in my high school.
Yeah. Well,
so, speaking of DC, have you seen the TV series Gotham?
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Neither am I, but I'm curious to hear the opinions around you guys. If you...
Because again, it's a show about what happened before Batman.
Yeah,
like Kelly said, I'm just not interested.
Mm-hmm.
What would be better than a Netflix series of Batman? Really, like you said to me the other day, Kelly, earning the title of the world's greatest detective. Hunting the criminals of Gotham, so on and so forth. That would be people would watch that. I mean, come on.
I think they could have done that with the Gotham series. It didn't need to be about Bruce Wayne as a kid. It could have just been a sideshow about the Gotham police having to deal with, Batman doesn't take care of all of the crime and criminals in Gotham. And having him be a character where you would, occasionally see the shadow of the bat, or people are talking about, oh shit, this happened because Batman showed up. That would have been far more interesting than a show about this kid.
Yeah, well, and I would like, there are a lot of other heroes and things going on in Gotham besides Batman.
Yeah, true.
And now a lot of that has been subsumed into the Green Arrow mythos, but
yeah,
that is part of a problem. So,
well, the neat thing with Gotham, I stopped watching it about the second season, but if it had just been a show about the crime families against each other, which is what it has kind of turned into,
I do agree.
That would have been much more interesting than the police in Gotham City, I think.
And it needed it seemed to go all over the place with its story arcs. Didn't have like a coherent direction it was going into at times. We'll bring in this villain for a while, and then we'll go off in another direction. And
yeah, it's interesting though. I mean, what are they on? 4th season, 5th season? I mean, it must be doing fairly well for them.
Somebody likes it, but
no.
I don't. And I'm a huge Batman fan. Everybody knows. So
I liked some of the goofiest aspects of it, because again, it reminded me of the Tim Burton's movies and of the TV series.
Yeah.
But overall, the plot wasn't that good, and some of the characters that they added, like was she called, like Fish Mooney, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't like her. So, I mean, the DC has so many characters. Why are you going to add more if I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What a weird series.
They've got a TV version of The Flash, and now they have a movie version of The Flash. There's no reason you can't do the same with Superman and Batman. And I know, like Kelly said to me the other day, Superman has appeared in a few episodes on Supergirl, but that's just because they can't get around it. He's not going to be on the show in any consistent manner.
Superman becomes a problem just in general if you're doing a DC comic or a DC show, because he can do anything and everything. And so why not, when you have a problem and you've got a direct line to Superman, why don't you just go, man, this is really bad. I could possibly take care of this and get my back broken. Or maybe you could just swing in here for 15 seconds, clean up the town for me, and, I'll start fresh.
There's a
yeah.
I'm going to paraphrase it, but when they did Kingdom Come, was it Alex Ross, and I can't remember the other guy. They did this afterward where it's like they finished up the series, and one of the editors looked at it and said, "Oh, I didn't realize it was going to be a Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman story." And they looked at each other. And it's like, well, anytime you have those characters in the book, it always becomes about them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Ignore the fact that these guys are, they're just kind of on the sidelines.
Right. These are your big three. And no matter what you do with them, once you put them in there, they are going to take center stage. So,
it's also a problem for Green Arrow and the Flash, because if this is a DC universe, where is Superman? You know, you got to ask yourself that.
He's on.
Where's Batman?
He's on another universe.
Yeah, I guess this universe doesn't have Superman and Batman, but then again, the Reverse Flash mentions Superman to Supergirl in the crossovers. He says, "I fought your cousin." You know,
he said in a parallel.
I missed that.
He said in a parallel reality. Okay,
in one of the, because he's traveling through parallel realities.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know,
it's just like Batman was alluded to in Supergirl.
I think. I'm sorry, Rick. Go ahead.
I was going to say somebody said, you know, why did we move from Gotham to come here? And there was some, the other reference was, I think Jimmy Olsen talked about Superman's frenemy.
Huh. Hey, not to completely derail this and get into trashy Hollywood talk, but how crazy is it that Allison Mack from Smallville is being arrested for running a sex trafficking?
Holy moly, man.
What has happened to the world?
Yeah.
Chloe, not you, Chloe Sullivan. No.
I didn't know.
But yeah, it's beyond just running sex trafficking. It's a cult.
Yeah, full on cult with branding people with her initials and oh my god, awful.
I mean, you could, if you wrote this as a story, it would be unbelievable.
Well, and that's what it said. Somebody said that. It's just like, if you tried to sell this to Hollywood, they would laugh you out of the world. And it's insane.
I will never look at Chloe Sullivan in the same light again.
Well, you won't, because she's going to prison.
Right.
Yeah. Has she been arrested? I know her God guy has been arrested.
I think she's been arrested. I don't think he has yet.
No, he was arrested first.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah, he was arrested like a couple weeks ago, I think.
The good news is if they wait long enough, she can play herself in the TV movie.
Well, you know,
That's right.
you've actually had plots on television like this, because there was this, on the second season of Agent Carter, you had in effect the character was a fictionalization of Hedy Lamarr running a crime network.
That's true, yeah.
Well, but Hedy Lamarr was she is a super genius.
Yeah, I know, but not. We didn't. I'll tell you this. I didn't know that until this TV series came.
Really? Oh, Hedy Lamarr is one of my favorite characters because, yes, she's beautiful and she can act, but she's also a real scientist and has invented technology that we still use today.
Right. I read that in some science, some pulp style story, and I can't remember what it was. That was the first exposure I had to it, and then it ended up in fictionalized form on Agent Carter.
See, Mike, I told you, women can do whatever they want, no matter what you say.
Yeah, they can be cultists too. Yeah. Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. So what do we think about The Last Starfighter possible reboot?
Why?
Why?
I mean,
Greetings, Starfighter. I had to get that out there.
First of all, you know,
it's so beautiful. I love it. Love that
I'd
movie.
be totally fine if they wanted to take the original footage and spice up the effects.
Yeah, sure.
But there's no need. And also, how do you know, it's such a neat, contained 1980s story with a kid playing on a box video game, you know, that you could only find at an arcade. I don't even know if those exist anymore.
Yeah, and not everyone had the game. You know, I forget the guy's name. He said it wasn't even supposed to be shipped here. It was supposed to be shipped somewhere else. You know.
But you know, when they remade Psycho with Vince Vaughn, like, what was the point?
But
I didn't watch it, but wasn't it frame for frame?
It was frame for frame. Yeah,
almost. Yeah, there were a couple of scenes that were a little different. It was, that was a film school test. Like, it was so bizarre.
But you don't.
I don't get it.
You don't remake the classics.
Yeah.
I mean, Last Starfighter isn't a classic. Maybe you could make that a better movie. I'm not sure whether it should be made. but you don't remake things like Psycho or Citizen Kane or something like that.
Did Rick Lay just say that The Last Starfighter is not a classic?
Not a classic. Get the hell off my
God. Okay, well, do you remember the movie The Last Laugh? I think it was called. There's a famous movie where there was a concentration camp, and they had to fool the commandant with their show to rescue some people. Mel Brooks reshot it years later, frame for frame. And the only reason I mean, it was literally just about the same dialogue, nothing new, no new jokes. It wasn't even played for Mel Brooks style humor. And all I can figure it was his ego, or he loved it so much. It was his loving tribute to this original movie. So maybe this Last Starfighter is not just about money. maybe
it's a money grab. No, it's a money grab.
So it's not an ego thing.
Yeah, that original movie was with Jack Benny, and I think the title was something else other than The Last Laugh, but I don't remember.
And
was it To Be or Not to Be?
To Be or Not to Be, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And you never know. Maybe the Last Starfighter reboot, if it gets made, will be spectacular. But you have the nostalgia effect. People. It has to be fantastic. Otherwise, with movies like that, it has to be absolutely fantastic. Otherwise, people compare it to the original too much. So
you're right on the nostalgia thing. I mean, there's this whole desire to reboot everything from the 80s.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Speaking of which, guys, have you seen Ready Player One?
No, I haven't.
Speaking of the nostalgia for the 80s.
You've seen it, Kelly?
I did see it, yeah. On Philip's suggestion, I went and saw it, and I enjoyed it.
So have I. And as someone who, wasn't even alive in the 80s.
Young lady, you can just go.
Lord.
Yeah. How dare you? You're not making friends here.
It's past your bedtime, young lady.
Don't try to kick me out of the chat. No, I wanted to say that, I mean, nowadays they are rebooting everything, even stuff from the 90s, which I was alive. So, but at the same, I mean, I enjoyed Ready Player One, both the book and the movie, for different reasons. And I found myself like going back, especially as I was reading the book and looking, on the internet for all this stuff that I miss. So I thought it was like an educational experience in a sense. But at the same time, I can also understand why people are so nostalgic about that time, because like I am nostalgic about my childhood. And so, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, the things that influenced you and the things that you thought were really cool growing up, obviously.
Those were the days when hardly any of us had ever heard the name Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So we're all nostalgic for that time.
Speaking of
I would say the same thing for a few Italian politicians.
We talked about the terror on last... what is going on with your mic, Peter? It's like scraping or something. We talked about the terror on the last episode of the show, but then now episode 3 has come out of the terror, and man, shit got real, right?
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I'm a big fan of this book, and so that it's getting this kind of adaptation and shown this kind of respect is very, very pleasing to me.
Yeah, it's great. What night does it air? Because I keep looking on Amazon for episode 4.
Mondays.
Mondays? Okay, so I can watch it on Tuesday. Yeah. All right. I don't have cable, so. Here's a shocker. None of you will believe this. This is as out of the world as the Allison Mack story. Supernatural has been renewed for season 14. No one saw this coming.
How crazy is that? How crazy? 14 years.
Yeah, 14 years, man. Holy moly. Zoinks! I say to
And
that.
they haven't aged.
Son of a
day.
bitch. No. Did you see that one picture that they had put up of Sam? And it's a picture of the kid who played him as a kid next to him as a young kid, and then a picture of him as a young kid next to him as an adult. And it says, how did this happen? The kid they got looks more like him as a kid than he does as another adult. His look has changed so much. It's weird.
Yeah.
Is Supernatural going to become the bonanza of later generations?
I guess.
God.
It's an incredible long-running show.
Well, this show is not incredible by any means. It is a silly, simple way to pass an hour, but it certainly is entertaining.
It's about two guys who 3/4 of the time are trying to stop the evil that they got started in the first place. Solve the problem that they themselves caused. So, yeah.
Has its own mythology with how the devil fits in and angels and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I didn't start watching this show until like season 8 or 9. And somebody kept telling me that I had to watch it. And I was like, that show looks awful. And they said, not only should you be watching it, I can't believe that you're not writing it. All it is two guys who travel around the country in a muscle car, listening to 70s rock and fighting monsters. And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah,
okay, I'll give this a try,
that does grip you, that there.
So
I've told you before, when they moved into the bunker, they lost a little something, instead of staying in hotel rooms across the country, now they've got a home base. The show lost a little something there.
That's true.
So you're saying it was Phantasm?
Basically, yeah, which I love. And also I love the 70s, and I love muscle cars, and I love hot guys too. So
yeah, I bet you do.
Don't judge me.
I'm gonna do a little judging here, Kelly. Yeah.
Speaking of 70s, Kelly, have you read the book When the Sacred General Closes? Did I suggest that to you?
Never heard of it. What is that?
I'll send you a copy.
It's available on Kindle too.
I need. Let me write that down. Here it is. God. Here it is, written down on the same pad of paper.
How many times? This guy claims to love the 70s, and he hasn't read this detective novel.
Well, I will tell you that there's a movie that's coming out that my girls are just dying to see.
Yes.
Daphne and Velma.
Daphne and Velma? Oh, okay.
Daphne and Velma.
I'll watch that. Is it animated?
Are you sure that's not an adult film title?
No, it's live action. It's set in high school.
I could see that, with the Great Dane and the right director.
You had to go there. I was being all nice and innocent. I just,
this is what I get from watching Riverdale.
His mind naturally goes there. So, speaking of them, Kelly, you were a big fan of Scooby Natural, weren't you?
Yeah, really.
Wrong. No, you're dead wrong.
We bumped heads on this one, but I loved the Scooby Natural episode. But also, we discussed this on the latest Patreon episode. For those of you who are still holding down on Patreons, I was raised. I was raised, and I think a lot of kids were raised where their first, or at least a lot of monster kids, their first introduction to horror was Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo.
And it was always a disappointment back in the 70s when you were watching it or the 60s if you were a little older. It never turned out to actually be a monster. I guess the new series, they do actually fight real monsters.
You had that Vincent Price storyline where they were fighting real monsters.
I'll have to search that one out. I don't remember that.
There was a 1 year where it wasn't called. They changed the title somewhat, and the plot was they were taking orders from a sort of mysterious character played by Vincent Price. I mean, he did the voice, but it was called Vincent Van Ghoul, and they were like trying to track down all these demons that had escaped or something.
All right, this is on my must-watch list. I'm scratching out When the Sacred Mail Closes.
God, you asshole. I noticed that you're on Team Dean, Kelly.
Oh yeah, Team Dean all the way.
Okay. Before we get off the subject of Supernatural, which we've probably been on too long already, the latest episode of Supernatural finally after 13 years went Lovecraftian. Full on Lovecraftian, man. No holds barred Lovecraftian. So I liked it. Kelly disagrees.
The picture looked like From Beyond. What was it?
I thought it was fine. I didn't love it as much as Scooby Natural.
Whatever.
So Mike, I didn't see it. The picture kind of looked like something From Beyond. Is that what it was ripping off, or what?
No, it was basically, an outer god or Cthulhu or whoever. Just a different, slightly different name. Was it Yagath or something that the name was? I don't remember.
I don't remember, but it was definitely, whoever wrote it was obviously paying homage to Lovecraft. It was cultists who had summoned a outer world demon, and now we had to deal with it.
They've devoured most of their universe, they said, or she said, and now she's looking forward to devouring ours.
Yeah.
So if it was Yargoth, they named it after the planet from Whisper in Darkness.
No, it's something that started with a Y, but they didn't use a Lovecraft name, just something close to it. It's obviously a Lovecraft fan wrote that episode.
That's like in the Norless tapes, the demon was named Sargoth, which was sort of a Lovecraftian name.
Right.
Or more from Robert E. Howard.
Fred Lubno is curious about what everyone's favorite Cthulhu Mythos story, not written by Lovecraft. He says, for me, it's Robert Bloch's Notebook Found in a Deserted House. I also love Carl Edward Wagner's Styx. Well, cosmic horror, Lovecraftian themes. It's hard to say. Maybe Children of the Kingdom by Ted Klein. That would be high on my list. What about you guys?
Space Eaters by Frank Belknap Long, which Lovecraft gets his brain eaten. It's good as a joke and it's good as a horror story.
I find this question impossible to answer.
Yeah.
Because there's so many excellent authors. But if I'm going to mention one, it'll be one that's not as well known as I think it should be. Final Draft by David Annandale.
When I saw this afternoon, I knew you were going to say that.
It's a brilliant story. Now, he's not written anything else that I can think of that is Lovecraftian. Of course, I haven't really kept up with his work. But this is a magnificent story in the original Dead But Dreaming. It closes out the book about an architect who finds an old Gothic cathedral and has to find the provenance of when it was built. And all I could say is it's beautifully written and heartbreaking too.
All right. Kelly, you got something to add?
Yeah, it's tough to say anything about Lubnau's choices of Bloch and Wagner, because those would be my two favorite non-Lovecraftian Lovecraft stories. But in the book, The Children of Cthulhu, China, or is it China Mieville?
I think it's China Mieville.
Okay, wrote a story called Details, which is so spectacular and has stuck with me ever since I read this book. So that would be right up there with me.
I don't think I've read that. It's in Children of Cthulhu?
Yes.
Well, I'll have to check that out. Hold that up, yeah.
That's a rip on the Hounds of Tindalos, right?
That was the
yes, it is, Pete.
That was written, edited by John Peelin.
Yes,
that's an old book.
Isn't he the same guy that did Shadows over Baker Street?
Yeah, he's the same. Never mind, I don't want to go there.
Oh, come on. There were some good stories in there.
No, it's a matter of like him owing me money and never getting paid back and never going to be paid back.
I see. Okay, yeah.
Hold up that cover again.
Yeah. This is the hardback. I have no idea what the soft cover of it was like. This is,
in case you're wondering why the hands are raised that way. I just discovered this. That's why I had forgotten it was in Children of Cthulhu.
Okay. That's
from a picture from Aleister Crowley, and it's a sign of the devil. Those thumbs are supposed to be horns.
Wow.
Yes, I think I've seen the picture.
If we look closely, these hands are actually tearing the eyes of the picture out.
Mhm.
Right, but if you ever look up Aleister Crowley, you'll see a picture where their body is like this.
I remember. Isn't that what Dean Stockwell is doing in the?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay. And why can't I think of the name? The Done with Horror.
Yes.
Done it horror.
That's where that comes. Where it comes from originally, Crowley. In fact, it started. I was reading some crummy novelization of a forgotten 1916 serial called The Mysteries of Myra, where Aleister Crowley was the technical advisor, believe it or not, on an American serial that was financed by William Randolph Hearst, of all people. This is weird. I mean, but the story was horrible and drawn out and whatever. But they used this sign throughout the serial, and then I realized I had seen it in a lot of other places.
So I'm not a fan of zombie movies. I'm sick of zombies. You guys said watch Train to Busan, if I'm saying that correctly. And after watching Train to Busan, I have to tell you that I'm still sick of zombies. I did not like that movie.
Well, then you should not watch the third version of Day of the Dead.
Probably not. No,
I couldn't get past the first 15 minutes.
Is this because
the TV show iZombie is just for you, Mike?
I bet.
Is this because you hate Koreans, Mike?
No, not why.
You should watch the Disney Channel zombie film.
That's like the question: when did you stop beating your wife? I mean, there's no.
I'm just curious. I mean,
no, it is not because I hate Koreans. It's just I'm sick of zombies.
It has nothing to do with your hatred of Koreans.
Look, the movie didn't even scare Danielle. So,
man, I loved that movie, and I hate
my
films
wife.
too.
Yeah, but Danielle teaches school. I mean,
she's very scarable with horror movies.
It's amazing how zombies have changed from just mindless workers in sugarcane fields to flesh-eating creatures.
They certainly move a lot faster.
You know, did anyone else watch The Girl with All the Gifts?
I love that film.
No?
I did too. I tried to push that one on Mike. It is a zombie film, but it is a different zombie film. It's got Glenn Close in it. Come on, you guys. You know it's quality.
Any rabbits?
No rabbits, but they do. There is some violent cat death. So if you're against animals being killed, especially pets, then this is not
I'm going to pass on that Girl with All the Gifts. Thanks.
So good though. Everybody else, all of you with great taste, you should watch it.
That's The Girl with All the Gifts. Yes.
Speaking of great taste, I want to emphasize that the panelists here are all either writers or editors or both. Look up Rick Lai, L-A-I, on Amazon. Look up Peter Rawlik, sometimes known as Pete Rawlik, on Amazon. And especially if I've published the book, you'll want to buy it.
Yeah, we're going to change that name soon.
Matt's, okay. Matt's, you're going to go under the real writer, Mandy Rawlik. Matt's edited a couple of books. What are the books that you've edited, Matt?
Okay, well, there is one that we're working on currently is Pickman's Gallery, and we've finally got all the acceptances, contracts back, and we're hoping to publish in a couple months. Okay, that's actually happening. And also there's A Lonely and Curious Country.
Right, that is published.
Yes,
and available.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah. And Kelly is the, I think, assistant editor or something at Strange Eons. And it's a high quality Lovecraftian magazine, no joke. So,
right. Yeah, you can look my name up at YouPorn and see all sorts of cool stuff.
How did we get there?
We were just throwing out websites.
So anyway, and then there's always, last but not least, go to Lovecraft eZine website and click on Lovecraft eZine books, and you'll see how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we're up to 8 books that Lovecraft eZine Press has published. And
you should publish the lovely Lovecraft in English.
So wait, Mike, we didn't ever hear.
I don't think I can.
Did we ever hear your favorite non-Lovecraft story?
Yeah, Children of the Kingdom.
Okay, all right.
I mean, if I had to pick just one, it's very hard to, like you said, it's an impossible question to answer, really, because there's so many good ones. I mean, we were talking to Michael Minnis last week, and Snuff Movie is way up there, So
we should mention that with the Lovecraft eZine Press, Patreons can get those books for free, right? By becoming a Patreon?
Yeah, you can just Google Lovecraft eZine Patreon to get there. But yeah, if you get, I don't have the rewards in front of me, but $5 will get you, $5 a month will get you all the extra podcasts. Kelly mentioned that we did a podcast the other day. It's not up yet, but it will be in the next couple of days. We discussed Annihilation and a few other things. Some really cool content. And if you're at $10, you can get all the Kindle books for free that I've published. So just download them right to your Kindle, and as they come out, I will add them to the list. If you're at 25, then once a month I give you a free print book. We're starting with all the Lovecraft eZine Press books, and it's going to be probably a bit of a challenge to not give somebody a book that they already have, but we'll try and do that to the best of our ability. So yeah,
sounds like a sweet deal.
Thank you. Philip Fracassi is not here. He won't be here for a while because he's getting married. So he's getting married this month. So
he found the one person.
Better him than me.
Lucky him.
Yep. Congratulations to Philip. Anything else we need to talk about, guys?
No.
There's a few other prizes. We'll get to that in 1 second. Thanks for the reminder. There's a few more since I've discussed it. There's a couple of more episodes, 2 to 3 more episodes on Knife Point Horror, which we had that guy on. That's such an excellent podcast, and probably the scariest podcast that I've ever listened to. The best ones are the ones when that he's reading himself, and that's most of them. So just Google Knife Point Horror Podcast, and you'll come to it. Just if you haven't listened to any of the episodes, then you're in for a real treat. I would say start with the older ones and work your way up to the present. So there's even several with Lovecraftian themes, but it's basically weird fiction, in a podcast. So
nice.
Yeah, he's very talented in 2 ways at least. He's a great writer, and he's got a perfect voice for delivering the content. So yeah. All right, what are the prizes again, Matt? You want to talk about?
Remember, the prize is the entire series of Lovecraft PI, A Shot in the Dark, written by Stryker and Kahn, illustrated by Brandow. It's a 3 comic book series. It's really quite entertaining, and the art is lovely.
Yeah, and for those just listening, which I know is most people, and not viewing, these are in excellent shape. They're in the sleeve and got the cardboard back and everything. So
they look brand new to me.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I don't think Matt spilled anything on them. So.
Well, not yet.
Yeah. Next week we're going to talk with W.H. Pugmire, so that'll be fun.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. We haven't had Willem on in a while, so it'll be nice to talk to Willem. So
I read the strange dark one from him, from Pugmire.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah, great
cool.
book. If you want to get in on the prize, I almost forgot to say this, but if you want to get in on the prize, just email lovecraftezineprizes@gmail.com. lovecraftezineprizes@gmail.com. And in the subject, put, what's the title of that thing again?
A Shot in the Dark.
Put A Shot in the Dark in the title. Well,
Lovecraft PI.
those are the comics. Yeah. In the body of the email, say whatever you want to say, but I'm always interested in how people are listening to the show. So if you want to put that in there too, that would be great. Well, I think that's all we have. Thanks, Sarah, for being on the show. It was really great talking with you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Your art is lovely. I wish you all the success.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you, Sarah.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Sarah.
All right, thanks everybody, and good night, and we'll see you next week.